Hey, what's up? This is Jonas, and it's time for another in the studio video. This time I got a screen capturing software, which I think is going to make it a little bit easier to follow what I do. This time I thought I'd talk about a few different subjects actually, and I thought I'd do 5 things that I do in every mix and explain kind of 5 essential things that I do, and maybe talk about stuff that I can't really remember, reading about anywhere else, and it's kind of things that I've taught myself. Now these are essentially pretty simple tricks, but they can make a lot of difference. And yeah, maybe you know them already, or maybe you learn something new. So first up, and I actually read this somewhere many years ago, that the less plugins you have on the master channel during the mix down, the better. And yeah, mixing is, in my opinion, a constant part of the production of a track. So and there's a few reasons for this. First one is that less processing on the master channel makes it easier for the mastering engineer to do his work. When you send off a track for mastering, you usually have it signed and to a record label, and they are naturally going to want it mastered. But if you produce something to just try out or as a DJ tool, you will have to do some mastering yourself. But this is mainly to make sure that the track is loud enough, in my opinion. So if you can get the track sounding satisfying without having loads of plugins on the master channel, that's the best. And I used to have everything from EQs, multiband, compressors, saturation plugins, stereo wideners, limiters, and etc. on the master channel to begin with, and I gradually found out that by buzzing the right channels together and using specific plugins for those buzzes was a lot better way to work, and it was a lot easier to get the balance right in the mix, basically. So for the master channel, I only use a limiter, basically. It's the L2 limiter from Waves, which I kind of switch on and off from time to time to hear how the mix will sound when it's limited and loud, and when it's dry, basically. And I think any limiter would work. I know the adaptive limiter from Logic is really good, but the L2 limiter works really nice for me, I think. It has a very cool way of limiting without kind of raising the volume, so you can hear when the track is being over limited. Because sometimes if you just take down the threshold, it just gets louder and louder, and it will give you this psychoacoustic effect that louder is better, basically. So here you get the chance to put the threshold down while the out ceiling is going down as well, basically. Very nice. And then second thing I do, which I think is a trick that's very helpful, it's a bit of a strange one, but I found it to be really helpful. If you have studio monitors but you work a lot with headphones, it's easy to spread various elements of the track too much, where kind of your main elements get blurred or don't get the right volume in the mix, basically. When you play it out in clubs, I mean, like a lot of clubs will have their sound system set to mono, so it's very important that you constantly check your mix in mono. Now I take it a step further, where I will add a gain plugin on the master channel, and I'll set that to mono, and then I will fade the master channel to one of the monitors. But this makes it even easier to spot what needs to be louder in the mix, I think, and it will, a lot of times I will just sit in front of one monitor for an hour or so and mix, basically. And I probably, with some tracks, I've probably mixed more in front of one monitor than in a normal way, which is really weird, I guess, but it's just, it gives very good results, I think. And it's easier to spot kind of what elements needs to just pop out more. So, yeah, basically now it's just playing from one monitor, and I will position myself just in front of that one, basically. So give that a try. Another thing I do to make sure the mix stays balanced is whenever I create a new channel, a channel strip or a virtual instrument, I will add, so first I'll just add a, let's say a software instrument. First thing I will do is add a gain plugin. And I'll set that to -5 decibel. This is just to make sure that there is nothing that will clip or distort later in the mix. And I can use a lot of processing without having to run into any of these problems, basically. And there's been so many times in the past where I kind of find out that late in the mix that loads of channels are clipping, and it's just a pain in the ass to adjust this at that stage. So it's a super simple trick, but very helpful. Now, if it gets too low for you, obviously you can go back to the limiter and you can push the threshold down, and it'll get louder. Now, after the gain, you could just then add whatever you need of processing, but always have that in the beginning. It's very helpful. Now, next, I thought I'd shed some light on how I use reverb and different kinds of reverbs. Now, do not think that reverb is only used to get that long tail on your main synth or to make big effects. I use reverb on almost all the elements of my track just in different moderations, basically. Now, my favorite bundle of reverbs is the Lexicon, which is this one. It has all the reverbs you will need, including some really cool effect reverbs like reverse and so on. Now, if you don't have that and you use Logic, for example, let's see, the Space Designer is really cool. And it has a lot of creative ways to use a reverb, and it sounds great, so definitely try this out. So one type of reverb that I use a lot is the room reverb. It comes in different kinds of rooms, and it's great to use on the more attack elements in your track, like percussions and hi-hats and snares and etc. Now what I would do is use different types of rooms verbs for different elements. So the snare would have one type and the clap would have another, for example. Like for example here, the snare has a medium room, but only 10% is used on the mix. So it's a very subtle change, but it makes a difference. Now this uses a vocal reverb, but I mean, it doesn't have to be for vocals. And the snare uses a room reverb, basically. As you can see, I'm only using 10% of the reverb on the snare, but it does a big difference anyway. Now even the kick has reverb, but only the top kick. So my kick is 2 kicks basically. Let me just turn off this. And it's basically just to spread it out a little bit, you know, give it some room feel. A lot of people say that a kick has to be very mono, but I kind of disagree. Now after this, you can play around with the automation for every single reverb to make the track come a bit more alive. Now my last tip is something I'm sure a lot of you do, but if you don't, I think it's hard to progress the sound of your tracks and find your own personal sound. And it's very simple, basically. It's just experiment. What I mean by that is use your plugins in a less traditional way and have fun with them, basically. And try plugins that aren't meant for drums on drums. And I literally can't express how many times I've created a sound by a happy accident. And the most important thing about the process of a track is having fun, I think. And this is a way of having fun and perhaps spark your imagination if you feel like you're stuck, you know. Let's see, for example here I have a drum bus, and I've used a plugin that I'm not 100% sure what it actually does, but it's a vocal impact enhancer. So not initially meant for drums, but it does give it a little bit of saturation, and you know, it doesn't have to make sense. As long as it sounds better, it's okay, you know. There we go. Now, I hope this helps, and do hit me back if you have any questions regarding these subjects, and I'll do my best to answer them. Alright, see you later.